Good evening, everyone. I'm Carol Fitzgerald from Reading Group Guides, a website from the Book Report Network. I am so excited to welcome you to our, let's see, it is our 242nd, or no, I'm sorry, our 42nd Bookaccino Live book group presentation. Been doing this since COVID, I guess about 2000. Our guest this evening is Patrick Ryan, and we will be talking about his New York Times best-selling book, Buckeye. What an amazing novel. I actually listened to this on audio, and I want to talk about that in the course of our conversation as well, because I don't know how many of you listened to it on audio as well. If you did, just drop that in the chat. I'd like to see that as well. I had the pleasure of meeting Patrick before the book came out at a pre-publication lunch where he was talking about the amount of research that had gone into this book. And I was just fascinated about a book that would take place over 60 years, over 6 decades. And I just felt that that was such an interesting play on thinking about how the characters would evolve against each of the times that we were up against in this country as well. Our book reporter reviewer, Stuart Schiffman, had this to say. With believable characters and a story of small town America that reminds us that goodness can be important in our lives, Patrick Ryan's novel is a gratifying, entertaining, and welcome reading experience. So let's talk about the format for this evening so everybody knows what's going to go on. We're going to be start by me noting that everybody who is at this book club, this is not just the wine, drink the wine, have the hors d'oeuvres book club. We're assuming you've read the book. So just know that there will be spoilers. There will be spoilers that we'll be talking about throughout the evening. I'm going to begin with a couple of questions for Patrick, and then some of our readers are going to be joining us on screen with questions, and others who submitted questions in advance will be jumping on with their questions as well. And then for some of the more camera shy people, I'll be asking their questions for them. Throughout the evening, if you could drop any of your questions into the Q&A below, our fabulous editorial director, Tom Donadio, will be looking for those to see things that have not been asked already. So let me just see. I think that is all that housekeeping behind us. So let's welcome Patrick to the stage. Hi, Patrick. Great to see you.
Great to see you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, this is going to be so much fun simply because we have so many readers who submitted great questions. And the feedback that we've been hearing about this book since it came out from our readers has been terrific. So to have an opportunity to be able to hear from you is going to be really, really special for us tonight. So thanks for making the time.
Oh, yeah, my pleasure.
So, okay, you are go to a bookstore and somebody turns to you and says, "How do you describe Buckeye?" What do you say?
Oh, well, do I want them to buy it or do I want them to? If I want to, it's what I find is it's a challenge to sum up the events. It doesn't come across that well. But what I do like to say is that it's a story about two families, and it's about how one bad decision and a lot of follow-up secrecy compounds their lives and ends up shaping the generation to come.
Hmm.
And it's a novel that is very interested in exploring how important and also complicated the concept of forgiveness is to our lives. And it also is a novel that wants to take a deep dive into the nature of grief, which I find personally just very interesting because it's different every time for everybody. And we can talk a lot about how to do it and how to get through it, but it really is, I find, a new ball game every time.
Yeah. And we're just talking this at dinner. We have a friend who's in town and she was talking about when her mother passed away, when her father passed away, how different things were. And we were saying the same thing is like you have a different feeling when it's the first parent sometimes, if it's a child, if it's something, and you actually do grieve differently. And the stories become different and the humor or not humor about the situation becomes different according to the situation.
Yes.
So, definitely. Okay, so you were born in 1965. I'm not giving your age away or anything, but there was a lot of research to do on this book, like lots. Did you research first and then write, or did you research as you went along saying, wait, I'm up against a little hole over here. I don't know what to do?
It was the latter. Everything about this book, with the exception of just the basic concept of coming up with characters and writing about them, everything was new to me. It was new territory because I cut my teeth on short stories.
Hmm.
I had never done much research for my short stories. I think the furthest back I'd ever gotten was maybe the 1960s. And if you were born in the 60s, that doesn't feel like a reach.
Right.
It's a reach, you know. Um, and with this, as soon as I knew first that I wanted it to start when it was going to start,
Hmm.
which is 1945. And and I very quickly discovered that I wanted to write about the next generation and the previous generation. And so I just saw this thing unfold. And so I was afraid that if I did all the research first, it might, number one, I didn't know how long that was going to take. Number two, I was I had the foresight to know that I would end up doing a lot of research that what I would end up not needing.
Hmm.
And research is very seductive, as I found out. It's seductive to do, and then it's seductive to use once you've got it.
Hmm.
And so I thought, no, I kind of need to do it as I go. And I'm a slow writer anyway, but that was definitely one of the things that added to the time it took.
Yeah. As you're writing, you're saying, wait, I need this factoid. Let me go find this to fill in here. And then you're down the rabbit hole.
Yes, and the rabbit holes are fun, and you're thinking, I'm not wasting time.
Hmm.
I'm searching. I'm not on IMDb looking up movies or Gene Hackman's career or something like that. I'm actually looking things up. But it's just terribly seductive because there's so much stuff. And it was very educational for me because a lot of what I was finding out was stuff that other people, I guess, past a certain age, like anybody say 50 and older probably already knows, but it was news to me. So there were drafts where I was writing about things, and just the very few people I showed it to, some of them would say, well, this feels like an information dump because everybody already knows this. And
Right.
I would say, oh, right, right. But I haven't done it.
You still have to set like the table. You've got to set the table of what people are eating at the table for dinner, what the table looks like, who's there. Are you watching black and white TV? Or do you have the antenna up on the back? Because all those visuals that you have playing through the book gives us such a good sign of where we are in time. Like what has happened. The color television, it's going to be a really big deal. And how also the fact of setting this in Ohio. And doing that says something different than if it was on either of the coasts. And what made you, sit there and say, oh, this sounds like a good idea?
Um, the spark of it came from something I learned about my grandmother. I hesitate to throw this into the conversation because it was just one of those things where it became the diving board that I jumped off of, and then the book has nothing to do with the diving board.
Hmm.
But she lived in a very tiny town in Ohio, and that was where my dad was raised. That whole half of the family was the Ohio contingent, and the other half was the Georgia contingent. And I grew up in Florida, so vacation for us was going to those grandparents or those grandparents. And so I got to know that town. And then I went to graduate school in Northwest Ohio. And I really liked it. I was very interested in it because it wasn't Florida. Everything about it was just fascinating. The basements, as a little kid and to this day, basements intrigue me because there aren't basements in Florida, at
Right.
least nowhere near the coast. And I also liked the idea of landlocking the story.
Hmm.
If
Yeah. To go to the beach, you're going to go someplace. You're not just going to be
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, and I thought it is realistic that these people would not have passports, say, and might never have gone too far away. But that's more realistic for me if that happens in Northwest Ohio than on the coast of Florida, where you think, well, all this stuff is right here, right here, right here, right here.
But I'd heard you mention something about basement somewhere along the way, and I thought, so interesting. We played down the basement when we were little. Like, I guess those kids, it was always nice, so they went outside, but we went down the basement, and
Oh,
and it was always not down to the basement, it's down the basement. It was like there was definitely a word left out, go down the basement, And that's what you would go do, and you'd play with your friends down the basement. It was, and you didn't do that in Florida. I didn't think about it.
No, and I envied you. I envied and addicts too. Oh my gosh,
Hmm.
just those things were so cool to me. And then it ends up that there are several key scenes in the book that take place in basements.
Yes, yes. And I was reading those and I was like, oh, yes, I can see he has a real affinity for these. He's definitely loving this as a scenario, you know?
The basements.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. So, what do you enjoy more, writing or editing? Like you're sitting and writing and then you go back and you start self-editing before an editor even sees you. Which one do you enjoy most?
I enjoy editing more than writing, but I am not one of those writers who complains about writing. I just find that unfortunate
Hmm.
because to me the only reason to do it, since all of it's out of your hands, once the only thing we can control is the writing itself. And then if it's going to go on to publication and it's going to be with a publishing house that's going to publish it for you, then everything is out of your hands beyond that. And so all we have is the writing and what we do with the writing until we let go of it and try to, give it to our agent or send it to editors. And so I do enjoy the writing, but writing is filled with a whole lot of doubt, and editing is fun. And when
Hmm.
I edit, I do edit on screen, like I think anybody who writes on a computer, I'm editing while I write. But I really enjoy printing it out, and I use red pens, and I will it just looks like a bloodbath. But I really like that. I really enjoy it. And I like taking all of that and keying it back in. And then at some point I print it again. And I don't know, I would guess that this novel went through 7 drafts,
Wow.
but I don't even know if that's accurate because I was just revising so much as I went. I know I got to an end 7 times.
Got to an end 7 times. You were there and you're like, oh, but wait, how about back here? Did I, did I send them on their journey the right way so the reader is going to understand what's going on? Yeah, it's like, really, really difficult. Okay, I also read someplace that you had a map of the town, which is really important so that people don't run into each other when they're not supposed to see each other, etc. So you still have that map, or did you just like hand draw that?
I did. I hand drew 2 versions of it, and one of them was sort of a close-up of the downtown area. And I didn't do it right away, and it wasn't anything that I thought would need to accompany the book. In the Barnes and Noble edition and the Waterstones edition in the UK, they included it, which was
Oh,
fun.
it's really
And
nice.
it's got a little ledger and things, but it is just the map that I did for myself.
Hmm.
And it was because it was really important to me to make up this town and to have it be a composite of places that I was familiar with, but not an actual town. That was very important to me. And when I started drafting, I got very insecure about how I was delivering this town because it was almost like I was making a movie on location with a shoestring budget. So there was the hardware store scene, and I built the hardware store, and then there was nothing, and then there was the house. In my brain, I thought this isn't a town. That's going to convey to the reader that's not good. So I thought I've got to make a map just for some verisimilitude with
Hmm.
the world I created, so that I would know if somebody was going to walk from their house to the grocery store, roughly how long that would be, and that kind of thing. And it really, really helped me tremendously. But it just hung on the wall the entire time I was working on the book.
Yeah, it's like, okay, if they're going there, are they going to pass a crack in the sidewalk? Are they going to pass, whatever? And it makes a big difference because you're actually feeling the place at the same time.
Yeah, I think it somehow, in a weird way, it just conveys, it transmits to the reader. Um, for one little example, when I was having Cal and Margaret meet for a clandestine lunch, an impromptu lunch, and I thought that might have been around the time that I drew the map because I thought I got to have a better sense of where the hardware store is, where she lives, where he lives, and then where they're going to meet.
Right.
And relatively speaking, it's all the way over here, even though it's a small town and it's just there. But I feel like then I write with more confidence.
Hmm.
And and so in a weird way, it probably makes me include fewer details, which in a good way, about the layout of the town and just give the main ones. I think that the confidence, the security that I had working that way just transmitted to the reader, and then I didn't need to actually spell it out as much.
Right, and but you're also describing Americana in the 40s, and you're getting that sense of place of the streetlights go on, or this happens, or whatever, which is very different than the way we see world right now. It's just a different place,
Yeah.
and you've got to set that tone.
Yeah, and I was very aware of how different we live now. Um, I mean, I already was aware, of course, but writing it, um, just what a different planet it is now, and a different landscape in this country, and how we communicate, and how aware we are of the world outside of our house, outside
Mhm.
of our town, outside of our state, and and it was a little bit of a challenge I got into was that I in not wanting to write about an actual town. And the reasons I didn't want to do that were just practical. I just thought I don't want to get bogged down in what direction traffic went on this
Mhm.
particular street and when
Mhm.
we got the first drive through. I don't want people writing me after the book comes out saying that street was not named that until 1977 when somebody died. Okay. And I also didn't want to spend a lot of time researching so that I nailed some town down right and made everybody happy. I want to get the messages like the one I got 2 days ago from somebody who said, by the way, toaster ovens were not really in people's houses until the late 50s. And I
Mhm.
thought, oh, good to know. Wish I'd known it before. In the paperback, the phrase toaster oven is just going to be toaster. That kind of correction.
Yeah, and you can make changes for the paperback. Can you make a change on something like that? Do they come back to you?
I just turned in a list of, oh gosh, I don't know, 50, 60 things. And they were all very tiny.
Mhm.
And about maybe half of them were things I found in rereading where I just thought, oops, one more little tiny edit. There's a word I repeated within 3 lines I didn't mean to repeat, or caught a couple of typos. Not many of those are in there, but a lot of it was just fixing things.
Yeah.
One of the rides I refer to in Cedar Point, there was an early comment on. I stopped looking at Goodreads and Amazon once the book came out.
Mhm.
All these early copies of The Galley went out before the book to generate interest, and so I wanted to see what people were writing before it came out, which was both nerve-wracking and exciting.
Mhm.
But there was a comment, say, of somebody who said, "Well, that roller coaster wasn't built at Cedar Point until 1985. So it didn't exist in 1981. And this is what happens when you let a person from New York City write about someplace in Ohio."
Is there
Oh, this is my biggest worry, because like I
copy
feel more.
editor, did you not see this?
Yeah, I mean it's and I learned the hard way that it maybe in the old days copy editors were fact checkers, but they are not fact checkers now. They are copy editors,
Right.
and they're two different things. And so, you live and learn. Um, but in creating a fictitious town, one of the challenges I found in retrospect from comments people gave was that then you inadvertently have created an archetype when I didn't want to create an archetype. I just wanted to make this place feel convincing.
Right.
But those two kind of go hand in hand for readers, understandably.
Yeah.
So it's just like what you say. It's like I love how you phrased it. You got to set the table.
Yeah.
You
Set the
have
table.
to you've got to set the table for the time period.
Here it is. And this is what we think is happening here, folks. I've done as much research as I can. And if that throws you off, that this didn't happen till then, okay, you're reading really deeply, folks. Like, come on, let's stick with
And I'm flattered,
the high notes.
I welcome the comments. I really do. And there are quite a few that I've used.
Have you thought about putting, and I don't know if it's because of like, contractual, you can't because of what you did with Waterstones and B&N, putting that map up on your website. Because I think sometimes those little things, we build websites for authors too. So that's the reason I'm always thinking about what else you can put up there. And you put up something like that. You put up your notes. You put up something that people are just seeing. And when people discover the book, I mean, we're still in the first year that the book is out. This book will be read 6, 8, 10 years from now, and you will not be doing these same kind of interviews. But I think that it's so interesting to be able to see all the things that went on behind the scenes and just to say, wow, look at that. That was cool.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I can find out. I know that there was an exclusivity, but I also know that, say, with Barnes and Noble, with their special edition, once they run out, and then
Okay.
they sell the regular edition. They don't reprint that.
Hmm.
So I guess I'll ask them if they were going to do something in the paperback or not, and
Yeah.
I'll ask Waterstones. But I
I
think
just,
that would be interesting. One of the things I put up on, I have this little website until this book came out. I feel like me and my mother were the only two people who went to it. But now maybe a few more people, but it's not an interactive thing. It's not,
Mhm.
I don't get messages through it or anything like that. So it's fairly static. But I did have a picture up there for a while of the manuscript stack, which is it's about a foot and a half tall,
Wow.
the different drafts stacked up. And I thought that kind of thing might be interesting. And I
Yeah.
think it'd be fun to put up some of the marked up pages because I have pages that just look like a crazy, it looks like hypergraphia or hypergraphia. I'm not sure how to pronounce that.
I think that people are just so intrigued by what goes into writing a book. Like what goes into it? What goes into you realize you needed to draw the map, you needed to do this research, you needed to jump back off and do something else. And I think people are still like, completely looking for those details. After you finish reading the book, you feel like you spent all this time. Now, what else was going on in his head at the same time? And I just bring that up. And it's interesting because one of the readers, Roseanne Greco, I just want to make sure I give credit to people who have asked questions from Smithtown, New York. She was talking about the inspiration. That was one of the first questions that came into us. And I love seeing that people are just saying, like, well, where did the idea come from? And for you, it's in your head. For them, it's, wait a second, where was your gem? Where was the gem of the idea of let me get this started? And you wanted to do something from that time.
Yeah. I wanted to do something from that time. I'll tell you the thing that I learned about my grandmother living in this tiny town. She was not a pleasant person.
Mm,
Her favorite thing to do was to argue and to
mm,
upset people. And
mm,
she would just sort of look around the room and come up with something to stir up. And I found out well after she was dead that she had maintained this affair with a married man who lived a couple streets away in this tiny town, much tinier than the town I created. For decades, her daughter told me about that. And it was just jaw-dropping to me because it didn't fit with anything I had in my head of her character, of this person that I remembered, who lived to 1988. So, I was 23 or something, when she died. So I knew her
right.
well. I thought I knew her well. And that just didn't fit. And so for about 2 seconds, I thought maybe I'll write about that. And then 2 seconds after that, I thought, no, I have no interest in writing about her. But the setting kind of interested me.
Hmm.
And the idea that if you kept a secret for that long from the people immediately around you, so in theory, the people that you love the most and who love you the most, and you keep it, then other lies start coming up to facilitate it.
Hmm.
And you have to start telling them repeatedly, and you have to start saying them to yourself so that they feel real to you. And then they would have to start feeling like truths after a while, because you're living with them for so long. And that was, I jumped off the diving board of this autobiographical fact about my grandmother. And then I thought I want to write about two people who do something that has repercussions, unnecessary repercussions that get compounded. And the other thing that really interests me, and this is universal, is the longer you keep a secret
Hmm.
from somebody that you really care about, if and when it comes out, and time waters buried secrets, wine waters buried secrets, lots of things water buried secrets.
Yeah.
And when it comes out, then you are accountable not just for the lie, but for the time.
Hmm.
all that time, because then it feels like a million lies that were, every day you lived with this lie. So you were telling this lie. And that really interested me. And that connects to what I was saying at the beginning about forgiveness and how that plugs into how complicated forgiveness can be when it's most important, how complicated it can be. Because it's most important when it involves someone that you love and you want to keep loving.
And you're also thinking about, wait a second, I was at her funeral. Was he there?
Yeah, right.
Was he there? Was he a pallbearer? Was I having a drink next to him? Did I talk to him at the wake? I mean, seriously, it's you
Yeah.
like, wait, who was he? And that her daughter knew was really interesting too. Their daughter knew the story.
She knew the story and she told me, and she's everybody on that side of the family is now gone. I'm the last one. So
Wow.
it's sort of, you would think that then I could just take all that material and run with it. But I really I was not interested in resurrecting people that I um wasn't very fond of.
Yeah. No,
It
not
wasn't
that
that
fun.
kind of relationship. Um and and but the just the circumstances stayed with me. They just stuck with me.
Yeah.
And I thought I want to write about how this affects another generation too. That was very important.
Yeah. Where it goes next, where the story goes next.
How long you carry on the secrets.
Well, Debbie Moore is going to join us. She's been a part of most, if not all, of our 42 book group discussions. She's joining us from Myrtle Beach, and she always has such great questions. So, welcome, Debbie. Take it away.
Thanks, Carol. Hi, Patrick. It's really nice to meet you.
You too.
I have to tell you that your book like had me at about halfway through the first page, and you never lost me for the rest of the book.
Boy,
I
isn't that
loved it.
music to any author's ears. Thank you.
Um, and partly because of my age, so I lived through most of the story you tell, other than the World War story. So you have this book that spans, more than 3 decades in a small town and the effect of 3 wars on 2 families in that town. When you first envisioned this book, were these wars part of the story, or did they just appear organically given the arc of the story and the time span that you covered?
That's a wonderful question. I I knew that I from the beginning that I wanted to have one of these two people who meet and have this and make this mistake and um, be someone who wanted to serve in World War II and couldn't for a physical reason. And so I knew I was going to be writing about home front America during the war. And it wasn't, and it wasn't long after that that because I got to Everett, I got to this World War I vet soon because I did write the book. I don't write anything out of order that it's going to appear in unless that sort of happens by accident. So um, I pretty much wrote in the order that it appears in the
Mhm.
book. So I got to Everett fast, and that was very, very interesting to me. And I was writing the initial description of him, and I wrote the words. It was just a list I was making, and he wrote letters to presidents. And when I wrote that sentence, I thought, oh, that's funny. What would he write to presidents? And then his character just burst into life in my head and stayed that way because I thought, no, he's a hoarder. He lived through the Depression, and he's voicing things. He has no filter when he talks to anybody, but especially to politicians and presidents. The Vietnam component of it, that was the one where I realized, oh, duh, I'm gonna be writing about this. And in a weird way, this might sound goofy, but I knew from the get-go who was going to be. I knew the emotional arcs of all the main characters. I knew who was going to be together and who wasn't at the end. I knew who was going to be alive and who was going to be dead. So I knew that I wanted Skip to die. And it seems like a no-brainer now. Like what else could happen in this book but
Mhm.
Hal and Becky's son dies in that war.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But it got to me a little more slowly. It sort of crept up on me and I thought, oh yeah. And it was a bit intimidating because as I was saying before, I'm not a researcher, I'm not a historian. I get a big kick out of the fact that this book is categorized as historical fiction.
Fiction.
I understand why, but
Mhm.
I didn't set out to write that. I just wrote the story I wanted to write and followed the characters, and it needed to go in these places, and it needed to cover all these years. And it was many, many moments where I thought, oh boy, I'm in over my head. I'm in over my head. And one of the great things, it was frustrating along the way, but one of the great things is that the book was not under contract when I wrote it. And
Mm.
had no interest in trying to get a contract until I had at least taken it as far as I could take it. So that was officially, I guess, 3 full drafts and 6 years. But it gave me lots of time to do things like, oh, Vietnam, what am I going to do? I think I'll write Skip's death. That was probably 2 months of my life researching, trying to decide how he died, and then writing it and not liking that and writing it again and thinking this isn't convincing. And then finally realizing I don't want it, the book. I'm not going to show it. I
Mhm.
can't do it. It was also too upsetting. Um, a little off topic for your question, but it was the same thing with Felix's death. I hemmed and hawed and put it off and put it off. And I was writing the book in order, so it wasn't like I jumped ahead and just wrote past it. And I'll deal with that later. I stalled because I didn't want to write it because I didn't mind that he was going to die, but I just didn't want to write it. And then I ended up not. I step over it.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But a lot of the war stuff was by necessity and written in great insecurity.
Okay.
And then a lot of it, the success of it, I think, to the extent that it succeeds, was my listening to other people, my listening to my editor and trusting my editor when she would come back and say, this just doesn't feel convincing yet. This doesn't feel quite real. And I would always just say, okay. And sometimes just scrap and rewrite something
Mhm.
new, write something new, and sometimes just tinker and tinker and tinker.
Yeah. Um, so that sort of leads to my next question was like when you plan a book or when you plan this book, do you start with knowing who the characters are or the type of characters are that you want to write and then building a story around them? Or do you start with like creating the story first and then coming to the characters second?
That is one of my favorite questions that anyone could ask. I I don't really care a whole lot about plot. As a consumer, as a writer, I know things have to have a plot and we want them to have plots. This book has a plot, but it has a plot because I had to have one. There's got to be a shape. So I like to get a super loose idea, you know, the emotional landing pads of each character. I want to know, and I've done this with short stories too, where I just know what the feel is going to be. Did things go well or not well by the end? And then how do I get there? But the more I take notes on the story, the worse it is for me because I end up, instead of approaching, say, if we made an analogy to painting, instead of looking at a giant canvas and thinking, what's this mural going to look like? I work it all out and then I've got a paint by numbers plan. And I have no interest in painting it because what's the discovery in that?
Mhm.
And I've noted to death many ideas. Recently, in fact, I've noted to death a few ideas. So the best way that I find to work is to get a loose idea so that yeah, I can
Mhm.
see a plot emerging from this and then going into the characters. And I'll take notes, 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 notes on the characters. I have to control that aspect too, because I will note the characters to death sometimes. And I'll just think, well, now I don't really need to discover them. I just worked out their entire lives. Why did I do that? Like
Yeah.
you look at craft books, and there are some craft books that say, in order to write fiction, you need to do these things. And it will say, your main characters, for each one, you should have a kind of like a Bible for them. And it has, say, which parent were they closer to? What was their favorite movie? What was their favorite book? Which movie did they hate? And that's all really interesting. What was their favorite? What was the best day from their childhood? Uh, which death so far in their lives affected them the most? They're all great questions and they're really interesting. But what I found is that it's much better for me to not know that stuff and then get to the point when I'm writing and think, oh, this might be a time to mention a movie that he likes. Like this didn't
Yeah.
happen with Buckeye, but say with the character of Roman, it would have been hysterical to think about what Roman's favorite movie was in the moment that I was writing and then include it,
Mhm.
as opposed to taking the notes early. But it's very much about characters. I have to work out all the timelines before I can comfortably start writing, and that means when the parents were born, what year they got married, what year so and so got pregnant, so that I know what month the child was born, and all of that stuff. And I end up with tons of notes for projects I don't write.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really know how else to do it except dive in that way and then try not to overnote.
Yeah. Did you have a character that was your favorite character and one that was the most and was that character the easiest to write? And did you have a character that was the hardest to write?
Yes, I did. I can answer that very easily. Everett was the funnest and was the easiest. There were more letters of his in the earlier drafts, as you might imagine. I think at one point there were 10. There was a letter to John Kennedy. There was the letter to Kennedy said something like, "Are you 6 years old?" That's how it started. Lots of fun stuff, but of course, in the end, less is more. So we took them out. I had whole sections of his. He had a bootlegger past, and I wrote it,
Mhm.
and I took it out because the book was getting too long. And he was fun. The character that gave me the biggest challenge was Margaret.
Mm-hmm.
By far, hardest character I've ever worked with, and it's because she was and is a mystery to me. The thing that I knew about her before I started writing her was that I knew that she was going to come from nothing or next to nothing, not enter adulthood with the same tools that most of us have in terms of dealing with other people and disappointments, expectations. And and I knew that she was going to be fundamentally incapable of being happy. And I've known people like this, not a lot, but I have known people like this. I think everybody's known someone like this. And to see it from the outside is tragic. It's just, because you think you can't really make someone appreciate happiness. They have to that has to come from within. And so it's a real tragedy. And that's what I wanted to write about. And I did. And it means that I don't really understand her to this day because she does things that shock me. But my goal in that sort of thing, my goal always is to get the reader to a point of intimacy with the main characters so that when these things happen, the reader at least has a full understanding of why that character thinks that is the thing to do in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And in that vein, I don't think in terms of villains, good characters, bad characters. I don't like writing. I don't think about villains because I just think the key to writing about who we would call a villain is that they don't think of themselves as villains.
Mm-hmm.
That's I think the key to writing about bad people or just mean people is they don't see themselves as mean. They don't wake up twirling their mustache and going, I'm gonna make some lives miserable today. There are people who do that, but not the ones I want to write about. So she was, yes, she was very hard. And to this day, I'm kind of afraid of her.
I love that. I love that. I'm afraid of the character I created.
I kind of, well, I mean, I wouldn't really want to spend a whole lot of time with her.
Their company,
Rather
right?
spend time with Roman. And
Yeah.
Roman was, the least likable, I think, for me anyway.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Like I said, I really loved your book.
Oh,
So
thank
thanks for writing it.
Patrick, I'm saying I'm keeping a little bit of an eye on the chat, which I usually do. There's so many people saying that their book club is meeting tomorrow or next month or in July about this book. And there are so many people that are going to be discussing this with their book club. And I think it's wonderful to be able to see that, this book that came out, you wrote it, but did you ever think people across the country be talking about this book in a book club discussion moment? Not the same thing.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Absolutely. My big hope, I had an agent going in, and a very good agent. I love my agent. She's also a good friend of mine. And so I knew I had that. So my big hope was that it would become a book.
Yes. A book. We'll go from there. And then the people want to read the book. Well, here's an interesting one. Denise Mackey from Columbus, Ohio asks, we know why the book is set in Ohio. You've answered that part of it. But how about I'm going to go with the name Bonhomie? Like, where did you come up with the name? She's not completely asking that. Put a little bit of words in her mouth, but she's asking about Ohio. And was there a particular town that inspired it?
Um, the name, boy, I will tell you, and the person who asked this question, I'm sorry, what was her first name?
Her first name is Denise.
Denise, you know then very well that there are many, many place names in Ohio. So I didn't want it to be a real town. So the first thing you do is you think, what am I going to call it? And you go into Google and you type a name and you put a comma and then you do Ohio and you find out that every name is taken in Ohio. It's incredible. You think of something and you go, nope, it's either a village or a township or a town or a city or something. And I wanted it to be something that would just suggest happiness and have a kind of a European flair in that way that small towns in US states can. And I pronounce it Bonhomie.
Bonhomie? Okay.
It doesn't matter to me. And the pronunciation has been something that people have brought up. The first event I did in Columbus, I did an event at a Barnes and Noble. And the manager of the store said, how do you pronounce it? And I said, Bonhomie. And he said, no one from Ohio would pronounce it that way. And I thought, that's so interesting. How would you pronounce it? And he said, probably Bonhomie, but I don't know. But that was how I ended up coming up with that name. At first it was just to get a name that wasn't taken.
Yeah, something not
And
taken.
yeah, and then it turns out that I think there is a maple farm called Bonhomie Maple Farm, which is by complete coincidence in the tiny town that my dad family lived in, which was Fredericktown, which is about an hour outside of Columbus.
So you drove by there one day as a child and it lodged in your brain. And then years later, you were sitting writing and went, oh, that would be a good name for a town. There we go.
Well, no, I pulled it. I pulled the name. No, I
No,
found
I'm
out.
joking. I'm
Yeah.
joking.
Oh, yeah.
It's in the
No,
vestige of your mind.
because I kept, and I had some terrible names at first that were just ridiculous. I was just trying to be arty. Um, but and then I guess the second part of the answer would be that I knew I wanted it to be right around where I went to graduate school, and that was in Bowling Green. So, and I think the town of Bowling Green in the 40s was probably about the size of Bonhomie in the 40s. So I was picturing someplace close to Findlay, which I say in the book, kind of close to Findlay, south of Bowling Green. But that was my model.
Yeah.
Trains going through it.
Here's where you're going through from there.
Yeah.
Debbie Briscoe from Virginia Beach is going to join us now. And she's got a question for you.
Hi, and I am sort of rolling off of Debbie Moore's question. I've been a member of a book club for over 20 years, and we are discussing your book in a couple of months. And a lot of the books we read have strong female protagonists. Yours, your protagonist is not a female generally, but I am fascinated by the roles of the women and how you had such insight and perception of their characters. You've got Becky with her seances. Um, you've got Margaret. You've got Margaret, who is, yeah, Margaret. That's all I can say about that. Um, I can tell you, your book kept me going. Uh, I was recovering from surgery and I was walking and I had my headphones on, listening. And I came home and told my husband one day I walked 2.25 miles listening to the story because I didn't want to stop. So you really helped me recover from my surgery too. Thank you for that. But the women of the story, got to put my glasses on here. Um, they play such an important part in the story, especially like in the moral and emotional development of the rest of the characters. And I was fascinated by how they shaped the drive, the plot of your story. How did that happen for you? How did you delve into those women's characters?
Thank you for that. I actually feel like the book has four protagonists. I don't feel like I feel like there are four main characters and it's those two couples and then two secondary, the kids. So it's sort of six main characters, but really four primary ones. I I listen to people. This is gonna be my silliest answer of the evening, maybe, or just my oddest answer. I really like listening to people. I think it's a dying art. Um, I think observing other people and being in your own head, but trying to do it through the lens of other people has always interested me. Even as a kid, I was almost always, I mean, past the age of, say, 10, I was more interested in sitting off to the side in a room full of adults and listening and watching. I didn't need to talk. I didn't need to participate than I was with playing with other kids. I either wanted to be alone doing my own thing, which was usually drawing, or just hanging out with the grown-ups. And then I really think that being gay helps me write about women.
Mhm.
And that may sound like a kind of a goofy thing, but I have always felt outside of the cool club, put it that way, um, and a little bit outside of the gang in charge and the people running the show traditionally and that kind of thing. And it's made me, I think, from a very, very early age, equally aware of men and women and equally aware of uh, what each contribute to a relationship, a family, a household. Every figure of power, so to speak, in my life is and has been a woman.
Mhm.
And I can't say it's by design, like I made that sure that happened, but it happened. And I think it's very interesting. Um, both agents that I've had, both the editors that I've worked with, um, the person who got me writing, my dearest friend who I listen to more than anyone else, all of these people are women.
Mm.
And I just think it does continue to play a large part in the way I process, the way I observe the world, and then the way I write about it. And I don't find it any more of a challenge to write. This has nothing to how successful or not successful I am, but I don't find it any more of a challenge to write about from the perspective of a woman than from a man. If anything, I find it a little harder to write about a straight man because I just think, man, what is going on with y'all? What? I mean, I guess this is what's going on. I guess it's like writing about Roman, really, it was kind of fun, but I just think, I hope I'm getting this right.
Yeah,
Golly.
the way you got into those letters were very Archie Bunker-esque, I guess.
Yeah, although I feel like Everett would be, if Everett had a chance of being, he would be a feminist in a way, but Roman, oh my gosh, no.
Yes.
It's just
Uh,
some toxic behavior.
so how did you come up with Becky? You've said a lot about Margaret. How did you come up with Becky, who was raised by a traditional mother, and then she was running those seances out of her living room against her husband's wishes and a lot of the church ladies' wishes? Uh, how did you how'd you do that?
Okay, this is great. So everything I was just saying a few minutes ago about how I've got to write about the characters and I've got to learn who they are before I can start writing. The only time I have not done that in my life for a main character was with Becky. And it was because I wanted to keep writing in the order things were happening. I very quickly got to this scene where I thought, okay, Cal is gonna, he just found out he can't serve in the military. He just had this awkward interaction with his father. He just wants to have a milkshake. And he's going to meet his future wife. And I knew that I wanted her to believe in something about herself that would make people right around her kind of roll their eyes or not. Most people wouldn't quite get it, but I didn't know what it was yet. And I thought, yeah, she takes it seriously for her whole life. She's going to take it seriously. And I do have this interest in, I don't have a personal interest in seances, but I have an interest in how we regard and think about the dead, the people we've lost, and how we process whether or not they're communicating with us or we're communicating with them, or these moments, or oh, I think that was so and so who made that happen, or people will say, I had this dream. People who do not believe in ghosts, but still will say, I had a dream, and I really think that that was my mom visiting me or something like that. Um, Whether or not they believe in heaven or hell or God or anything, everyone has these experiences that they need to put in some little mental box. So I gravitated toward that for her. And I thought, well, and again, it's the only time I've ever done this with a character. I thought, okay, she's reading. What's she look like? She's got a cape and a beret. I don't know why, but she's got a cape and a beret. And I just made that thing. She's reading an Agatha Christie book, and she really thinks that everybody's equally interested in this book. Um, and just in a kind of innocent way. And then I thought, oh, when she was a kid, she had an experience where she really thinks that somebody dead spoke to her. So that's what she thinks that she can do that. And she's got it kind of fell into place in my head. Like she does seances. She's like 20, 21 years old. And she believes it. And that's her character. But then right after that, like the same day, the same session at my desk, I thought, I'm not going to do this to her. I'm not going to set her up to be a source of amusement for every other character except those people who believe in what she does. And for the reader, I'm not going to have her be this goofball comic relief. So she can do it. And I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how she can do it. She doesn't understand how she can do it, and she's okay with that. So if she's okay with it, I'm okay with it, right?
Mhm.
This is what I thought. I thought, I don't know if I can get away with it, but I'm going to have her do this, and it's real, and I'm going to weigh in. Not me, the narrator is going to weigh in, because I do think the narrator knows how she can do it, because the narrator is not me. The narrator is an entity who's telling the story. But the narrator probably understands how she can do it, but she doesn't. Nobody does who's alive in that town. but it's real. And
She helped a lot of people. She did.
helps a lot of people. And I will just add to that um, I knew where it would be going before long. I knew where it would be going in terms of Felix's storyline. With what he was dealing with when he came back from the war. I'm so used to being in don't spoil anything speak that I'm
Yeah,
doing.
see, now you can.
Um, and I wasn't sure if she was going to reach Augie. I didn't know how that was going to work out, but I thought, oh, he's going to go to her. Felix is going to go. Felix, the least likely person, the most practical guy, is going to end up going to her kind of as a last resort to make some peace. But what I didn't see coming was how that whole aspect of her life, even while I knew Skip was going to die, and then I knew Skip was going to die in Vietnam once I got into the second draft or so, I didn't see how her practice was going to turn around and come back to her in this impactful way that even as I'm saying it right now, I have goosebumps because I feel like I got so lucky with that. That was not my design. Like it wasn't, I thought, I'm going to have this character who can do this. And then way down the road, she's going to not be able to find her son or, she's going to think, oh my God, was I doing that all just to prepare myself for this? And then she finds out that she's actually not prepared for this thing that she's been helping people through for decades. All of that I kind of stumbled into. And I will always feel lucky, fortunate. I know I had to sort of throw all those balls in the air and make it possible for that to be a thing. But man, I'm not the plotter, and I did not come up with that beforehand. I came up with it deep in. And that day,
That is amazing. That's amazing. That really is.
yeah, the day when I thought, oh my gosh, she's not going to be able to find Skip and she's not going to know. And then one day he's going to talk to her. And I just took my glasses off. I just put my head down and I thought, oh my God, I never could have come up with that myself. It's the funniest way you think about it. But I just thought I would never, like, I know I did come up with it, but I don't feel like I did. I feel like I just got lucky.
I didn't plot that. It just happened. I didn't
No
plot it. It
obvious.
happened.
Yeah.
Well,
And
thank you so much for that answer. I appreciate it so much, and I enjoyed it.
You enjoyed it. Thank you so much for joining us. Our next question is coming in from Homa Watts from New Jersey. Homa was actually my older son's kindergarten and first grade teacher, which makes this even more fun to ask. She was a bit confused about the way you portrayed Margaret. I felt you were blaming her history as an abandoned child, an orphan, as the main reason for her sexual prowess and the abandonment of her son.
Mm,
So we just want to figure out, like her son Tom, I thought she needed more clarification for her behavior. What are your thoughts on that?
that is a very good and fair question. I knew that she was going to become entranced with the big city early so that when she left at a really young age, I mean, she leaves at 18
Mm-hmm.
and she's not your average 18-year-old. So she's really not prepared. But I thought, well, what might she do? And I liked the idea. I hated the idea that she was going to go to Columbus and then quickly meet the man that she marries. I thought I want to give her some time on her own.
Mm-hmm.
And and this is how I got to her sexual exploits, which is a tiny little part, but it is significant. And it was really weird for me to write about that stuff because it's not my wheelhouse in so many ways. But I thought I don't want to have her, like let's say I give her 9 months or a year on her own before she meets Felix. I don't want to have her be in fear that whole time. I don't want her to be in a state of being, timid, cautious. It just didn't interest me, and I thought it doesn't develop her because then she's really just a ball of clay and it's circumstances. So allowing her to, she's flirted with, she's like, oh yeah, this kind of feels like something in a movie. And then, sex after her horrific introduction to it,
Mhm.
uh, which I know is possibly, arguably a bit of a trope, but it's also, unfortunately, a big reality
Mhm.
um, that I think would happen in a heartbeat. Uh, that after that, then she would realize, oh, I could actually have some fun. And I wanted her to have some agency in her own life and just enjoy it. Enjoy it, enjoy it, enjoy it. So that when she met Felix, she would feel like she'd sown some wild oats. She wouldn't think about it in those terms, but she'd sown some wild oats. She'd been with some men. She could look at him and think, well, compared to so and so and so and so, she doesn't have his performance in bed to add into what she's measuring him against, out of propriety's sake and whatnot in the times. And, Felix was being very proper. Uh, but by the time she met him, it would seem like the reasonable thing to do. This is what a woman does. This is what they do in the movies. And again, like you write this and you hope this is convincing, and then I'm willing to revise it 100 times before I have to let go of it, and then it gets into print. And then later on, I thought it was again that investment in the mystery of her being somebody who, it's not just that she doesn't know how to be happy, but she doesn't know how to be invested in improving
Mhm.
herself. She doesn't there was a earlier draft, of the first draft. I hesitate to say this because I don't really want to expound on it, but there was no orphanage. Uh,
Mhm.
and she just had this extremely impoverished life on a farm, a very unfortunate, poor life, with some abuse. And I didn't like that. It didn't feel right. And I thought, no, the orphanage, Lydia is giving it her best shot with her. Lydia just falls in love with her and, would
Mhm.
just adopt her if she could, and does her best. So Margaret does have that, but she's just not able to carry it forward in a way that most of us would think, oh my gosh, would you, appreciate this, change what you can, accept what you can't.
Keep
Uh,
going. Yeah.
yeah, keep going. And it's so important to her to have this life that she feels like she deserves, but she doesn't know how to get it and she doesn't know how to maintain it. And she is I don't even, she's not even a broken person, because I don't know at what point she was broken, but she's just different.
Yeah. There's a
She's
little bit of damage. There's a little bit of damage somehow. There's
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
yeah, and she never gets the answer that the big answer that she wants is, why did her mother do this?
Mhm.
And I also knew that she was never going to get that answer. And it wasn't going to be about her trying to track this person down, or this person reappearing suddenly, hi, I'm your mom.
Mhm.
Wasn't going to be that. And and so what would somebody like that do with that? As a novelist, the worst thing I could imagine somebody like that doing is what she does,
Mhm.
which is abandons her child, the same thing that happened to her. As a novelist, the thing that interests me most about that is to try to write it so that when the reader's watching her do it, the reader, and this goes back to what I was saying a few minutes ago, but the reader would, even if the reader's going, oh my gosh, you are horrible,
Yeah.
how can you do it? The reader would hopefully think, well, actually, in that head, she really does think it's the thing to do.
Mhm.
She really thinks that there's just everything would be better for everybody involved if I removed myself from this. And and it's kind of cowardly. She's leaving before the bad stuff hits the fan, if it's going to hit the fan. Um, she really leaves Felix in a lurch,
Mhm.
but lurch.
Lurch.
Um, but uh, sh- I don't like formulas, right? I don't want to write with formulas, and so I thought there's no redemption for her. There's no
Mhm.
redemption.
Mhm.
I don't condemn her, but there's no redemption. I deliberately didn't say what Tom says to her. Um, and in fact, the narrator doesn't even let the reader know. You know,
Yeah.
like it might have been I love you, it might have been I forgive you. We don't know. You know, she doesn't get forgiven. She gets because he's not ready. Because that's another thing about the complicated nature of forgiveness. It's not always possible.
Mm-mm.
It is not anything to be guaranteed, you know, to be dependent on. Um, and sometimes the people who really want to bestow it cannot do it.
Mhm.
And I do think that later in Tom's life, he will be able to. But in that moment, that last time that they see each other, that's not what's happening for him. And he's actually really put off by the fact that she just wants to say, I'm sorry for everything. He's like, no, no,
You
no.
can't just say those words. There's a lot more. Yeah.
Yeah, you cannot say those words. Like, let's talk. And if we're not going to talk, we're going to leave things as they are.
Yeah. Can't do that. Can't go there. Mia is going to join us from Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and she's got her questions. Hi,
It's
Mia.
nice to meet you. I
Hi.
just want to say first, thank you for putting this book into my life. And I do agree with Miss Moore. You had me hooked within the first few pages, and that's all I needed. A lot of the fiction that I read, I do struggle to connect with characters a lot. But in Buckeye, I got attached to everyone. So my question is more character based. So for me, I had a very difficult time accepting Cal's and Margaret's relationship for what it was, which was just an affair. Um, I found myself wanting them to be together and feeling so invested in their connection, like when they would have that look from across the street or just subtle things. How were you able to craft their dynamic so that like readers like me could empathize with them despite the obvious moral complications?
Wow, that is a brilliant question. And I want to just say, I got lucky. I got lucky. Um, I knew, I knew as much as I knew what I wanted to do in the book, I knew for sure some things I didn't want to do. And to go back to what I was saying about that little spark with my grandmother, you know, and she had this prolonged affair. And I thought, I don't have any interest in writing about a prolonged affair like that. And two married people pining for each other while they're married to other people. I feel like it's been done really well a lot. And and so I thought, oh, it's kind of more interesting if it was a fling. To me, it was just more interesting if it really was a fling and it was sexually charged, brief. I think it's 3 weeks it lasts. And that's it. So that it makes everything a little bit, in a way, like it makes everything a little bit grosser and stickier, you know, afterwards because it's not love.
Yeah.
It's not, it's just, oh, this happened and we still live here. Um,
I think it was a draw of toxicity for me. I don't know. I kept
yeah,
I want them together, but I just don't know why.
yeah, and I I'm glad that you did because that there's that late scene. It's the last time that Cal sees Margaret where she's basically telling him, I think like the last words he wants to hear. Like, don't you think Becky should know? Don't you think Felix should know? And I'm going to leave. And suddenly having him just feel like the rug was pulled out from under him and the little flicker of, oh, a little bit of pining. Also in that scene in the hardware in the what was it, the garden shop where he runs into her and he's got his son and she's got this baby
Yes.
and he's doing math in his head and stuff.
It was,
And the thing that I wrote that scene a few different ways and I wasn't really happy with it until I wrote the coda to the scene, which was bringing the reader to her after he walks away. And she's just thinking, it's basically she's thinking it's so different for
Mhm.
men and for women in this kind of a situation. It is so different. It is not fair. It is not even.
Mhm.
And so to throw in a romantic component to that, I don't even know how I would have managed it
Mhm.
without, as you indicated, without down the road getting them to want to be together.
Mhm.
And I kind of felt like the bigger challenge for me would be not doing that, so that what comes up in in its place, what other emotions come up to in place of that.
Mhm.
That's a wonderful question. Thank you.
Thank you. If that asked all the questions I have, would be here all night. So that's my only question. But I am very happy to have this opportunity just to virtually meet you, because the last thing I just need you to know is that Felix and Augie's relationship, it just left the hole in my heart that I still haven't recovered from. And
Oh,
I'm working on getting my master's right now, but I substitute at a Catholic high school, and they have these quotes on the walls, and I've seen them every day for a long, long time. And up until I read Buckeye, did the quote that's been there forever, I read every day, pop out, and it was, "The things we love tell us who we are." And so now when I see it, it just means something completely different to me, and that's what the book really changed a
oh
lot for me
my
and my.
gosh.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for telling me that. That's wonderful.
Thank you so
And
much.
Nia, I love that you've been telling all your friends to read the book. I
I
love that.
I
Everybody, you've said you've been
I
saying,
have.
read this book, read this
I
book.
have. And I heard about it. I watched PBS, and it was one of their, I'm trying to remember her name. She was one of the librarians, and she was just recommending Buckeye. And I went to the store. I'll maybe get it on my Kindle and then get it in hard copy. And I was like, I'm just gonna go ahead and buy it. And I don't have any regrets. I love it so much. And if you ever get a PO box, I want to send it so you can sign it for me. But I love this book with my whole heart.
Yeah, we should connect it. We should share information.
Patrick, me and we'll figure this out. I'll
Yeah.
figure
Thank
this
you.
out. Don't
Okay,
worry
thank
about it.
you
We'll
so
get this
much.
figured out, Mia. You make sure you keep in touch with me and we'll get that book signed. Do you agree, Patrick? We'll figure
Yes,
it out.
absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
we're on it. Thank you so much, Mia, for joining us. Monica, I don't know if Monica Brooks is available from Monroe, Connecticut. If not, I am going to ask her question. What was your favorite book as a child?
Oh boy. Oh boy. Um, it was the collected stories of Mark Twain. I think that's the most honest answer.
Most
There
honest
were not a
answer.
whole lot of books in the house. There was the set of Hardy Boys and the set of Nancy Drews. They were very easy to exhaust. And and then there were, books that I would get from the library at school, and there were books that I dearly loved. Like I could name a number of books, middle grade. Um, but my grandparents gave me, and I still have this exact copy, and I believe they got it from the Book of the Month Club. I believe it's a Book of the Month Club edition, and it's on the shelf in my living room, and it's inscribed to me. And I can't remember which birthday it was, but that book, I got it and I thought, oh my gosh, it's a doorstop. It's the phone book. But I had no idea what a short story could do
Mhm.
until I started reading these things. And it's this big fat book of Twain, so it's lots of character sketches and just humorous pieces. And I just didn't know that fiction could do it. And that kind of plugged into when I read, um, I would say when I read Flannery O'Connor
Mhm.
later, where I thought, oh my gosh, fiction can do this. And then when I read James Baldwin, and I thought, you can really write about emotion without being sappy or corny or romantic or anything or whiny. You can really write about anguish and emotion and have it be compelling and character driven. Um, and that was something I got in Baldwin, but that was later. It was Mark Twain, and then I just started reading really wide in high school.
Mhm.
Had no guidance. Like no one was saying you need to read this set of books. So I would get my allowance every Friday and I would go to the mall. I would walk to the mall and I would go into the bookstore, which I think was a B. Dalton or something like that. And I would buy a book and I would read it every week. And that was anything that if the cover looked good and I read the back, it looked good. So I read a separate piece. I read To Kill a Mockingbird. I read the novelization of The Cannonball Run. I read, just junk, romance, everything. I read wide. And a lot of Stephen King and a lot of fantasy and stuff like that. But I was I had such broad taste. I didn't have taste. I was just like, give me books. And I'm glad for that because and I still kind of want to read that way. I don't have time to do it anymore, but I really do still want to be reading. I want to be throwing that stuff into my more arty reading. My,
Yeah, reading eclectically. I like, when I used to read eclectically, and I don't do that as much anymore. I don't just,
yeah.
there are a lot of times where, people sit there and say the kids are reading romantasy right now, and I'm like, whoa, I've got this whole shelf that's on the back of the shelf here that, I was reading those same books. Read a lot
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
Danielle Steele for a lot of years, I read a lot of whatever. It was really interesting to me too, because I listened to the audiobook, which was narrated by Michael Crouch. And the experience of listening and reading a book are very different for me, only because I fold down pages. Usually I'm reading an arc and I'm folding down pages. And when I was going to go to this interview, I had no folded down pages because everything had been there. And they said, oh, you can bookmark it. I'm like, when you're driving down the highway, you are not bookmarking the audiobook. You're just not doing it, but you're listening in a completely different way. And
Yeah.
you're hearing. And the one part that really got me was the part about the draft that night when people are waiting for those numbers to be called. And my birthday was December 7th. And I was always thinking, like, what would my number have been? What would have happened? And that scene was so beautifully drawn as that you could just picture the tension that night in the homes of what is going to happen because it meant your child was going to have an experience or not have it. It was either going to happen or it wasn't. And you weren't going to get a whole lot of there was no decision in this except they're going to go to Canada or go hide or do something. But other than that, your child's sort of future was being played out that night by a number that came up in the Cannonball and some in the chat saying in college lounges. Yes, it was all these places where you were seeing that unfold. And it was really, this is where your life's going right now, whether you planned it or not.
For a war that very, 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 very few people thought we should be in
Right.
at time and since. And no one wanted their kid to go die for that
Mm-mm. No.
any more than they want their kid to die right now for what's going on. It's
And it was just so interesting because you're thinking of where you were that night and where your birthday could be one day off or one day here. And somebody was going, like, we're all okay. And somebody else is going, I can't even believe this is what's going to happen right now. And I just thought that that scene brought back so much and so much to my mind of like right there of where you were and what you were sitting and thinking. And you can read that scene now and still think about because you're hearing the numbers coming up. And I'm thinking of somebody who was born on that day. And I'm thinking about somebody I know now. And they may be like my child now. And I'm thinking if I have two boys and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, if January 23rd or 28th had come up, how would I have felt? And it was as they were pulling these numbers, and it was a very solemn situation as well as they're pulling them. And there's this ache that I was just feeling just reading those lines.
oh gosh. Well, I'm flattered that
Yeah. It really did something,
I
because
kind of wrote it in that state because
Mhm.
that was where research came in. I didn't really know what it had looked like or how it had gone down. I knew that it happened until I started looking it up. And I thought, just as you're saying, the next day you're running into people and you know your friends' kids' birthdays, and some of you are going and some of you aren't. And
And it's black and white TV. It's black and white. And I think there's just this moment of you're watching it in black and white. And it's like, there were just all these things that I was thinking about when I was listening to that part. I was like, I remember where I was standing in the kitchen. And it's weird when I'm sitting there saying I was listening to an audiobook and I know exactly where I was when I was listening to that particular section because it sort of like stopped me in my tracks because it said it's going to mean something for that boy and something for that boy. And what's it going to mean?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that was a challenge to write emotionally. Not emotionally for me, but emotionally for the characters, like trying to get that right, trying to nail what that would look like. Also, the phenomenon of having your child have a mind of his own and finding that out
mhm.
because he enlisted for that war.
Yeah.
Uh, that was another thing because the more reading I did, just reading personal accounts and things, and you realize, oh yeah, there were plenty of people who did sign up,
Hmm.
who wanted to be in the military and have that work and go. And
Yeah.
there was also a moment where this is such an obvious thing, but I thought, oh, to be in the generation of Cal and Margaret and Becky and Felix, you are in the generation where you might very well have fought if you were a man. You might very
Right.
well have fought in World War II.
Right.
You might very well have had a parent who fought in World War I, and you might very well have a kid who goes off to Vietnam.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of war. And that was when I wrapped my head around that very obvious thing, uh, I then had to I knew that what I was in for. I knew that I had to go there.
And it's like the difference between 1927 and 1929. My husband's father was born in 1927. There was something, I think he had a heart murmur or something, that he couldn't go to war in World War II. My father would have gone to Korea, but ended up teaching here instead of going overseas. And you think about that 2-year age difference and what that meant for their lives and what they would have looked at. It's very, very, very interesting.
Yeah.
And it's that math kind of a thing of a question of months, a question of this, a question of that, and where the ball dropped, you know? Um, Off camera, Beatty Reynolds from Utica, New York, shared not a question but a comment about how moved she was by the book. She said it touched so many parts of her life growing up, and she can't recall being affected this way after reading any other book. And she just shares many thanks for such exquisite words and affording me this experience.
Oh, thank you very much. That's beautiful to hear.
And with that lovely comment, I think we should go. Tom, do you have anything in the Q&A? Because I think that's a beautiful one for us to see what else you have from the audience.
Absolutely. Yes, we do. And following up on what you were talking about with the draft, I did want to read this comment from Ella, who said, my brother's draft number was very high, and I know he felt lacking at times. As the wife of a soldier for 31 years, I found the book to be an excellent retelling of the war and would be so readable to everyone. Excellent book.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I
Fabulous.
was ready for that. You said it was a comment and not a question, so I was ready for that to be a comment to tell me I'd gotten lots of things wrong, or that's wonderful. Thank you.
Now I know that you had talked about this earlier, but I did want to read this from Agatha. She said the character development was beautiful. I was especially drawn to Becky and found it to be such a nice surprise that the book contained a paranormal element. And again, I know you talked about this, but she said, where did that come from? Do you have a personal interest in psychics and reaching out to those on the other side? And then she adds, my 6-year-old daughter Natalia says hello. We have a 6-year-old fan out there.
Hi, Natalia. Um, I, I, what I think is that we don't know for sure, right? We don't know for sure what's past death because no one's ever come back and told us.
Mhm.
So we don't know if there's a possibility of any sort of communication. If there is, and we choose not to believe in it, how rude. That's what I think. It's like, how rude to be on the living side and just think, well, no, the dead can't communicate with us, they're gone. If they're actually trying to reach us in some way. And again, I come back to this thing about usually it's a dream where even if people don't believe in anything like that, uh, almost everyone has an experience where they have a dream about somebody who they lost, and it's just a nothing dream. It's just a walking down the street dream, little conversation, and you wake up and think, I was it just a dream? I don't know. And that possibility, why not live with that possibility? The like I said, I've never been to a seance, and I find the idea of leaning into one individual who can do it, I would find that a little odd myself. But it was really interesting to pursue a character who, in the world of the book, she can do it. And to have her, it was also really important to have her not monetize it and to to have her approach to it be such that when it doesn't work, she's just like, sorry, it's not happening.
Yeah. Can't
No,
communicate. It's not there. Message not there. Made it more real. Made it more real that you felt she was actually doing because sometimes it's not going to work for me. It's not.
yeah. So I'm not just going to
Not happening.
provide something. Yeah.
I'm not just phoning it in.
But boy, I mean, talk about the things I didn't see coming before I started the book. I never thought I'd be writing a book with a paranormal element. Never, 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 never. But it fit and it felt right when I got there. So I just went with it.
It was something from high school was telepathing its way in. From those years, you just used to read anything and everything. See,
Yeah.
it all came in handy. It all came in
Yeah,
handy.
I love reading about seances. I love seeing them in films.
Yeah.
I'm drawn to it, but it's not my place I go to when I think
Right.
about.
Linda says, I'm a native of Northwest Ohio and graduate of the University of Toledo. While reading the book, I spent a lot of time appreciating your geographic indicators. How long were you at Bowling Green to get the lay of that land?
I was in Bowling Green for the standard 2 years of graduate school. I had I knew parents of the person that I was with, my partner at that time, who had moved up to Port Clinton, up, in the Cedar Point neck of the woods and on right near the lake. And so when the 2 years I was in Bowling Green, we would go there often because I can't remember how long it took to drive there, but it wasn't that long. We could drive over there in a day and have a meal. And again, everything, when I got to Bowling Green, it was a tiny program. It took 5 people in each genre a year. So 5 people in fiction, 5 poets. That's what it took. And there were 5 already there. So there were 10 at any one time. I think everybody that I knew who wasn't from the area in some way, like wasn't from Ohio, say, couldn't stand that town. They would just talk about it in terms of, and it wasn't anything inherent to Bowling Green. It was just, oh, this dumb little town. I can't wait to get out of here. How long do we have to live here? I was never like that. The whole time I was just walking around like Mary Tyler Moore. I was just like, oh, look at these houses. Oh, they have dormer windows. Oh, look at the train track. I'm crossing the train. I'm walking along the train tracks. Never wore off. It just stayed fun for me in that weird way that I've lived in New York now for 27 years and the subway system is crappy, but I still get a kick out of riding those trains
Yeah.
underground. I just think it's fun. So that was as much of the lay of the land as I got. And then remembering when I was a kid, what that tiny little town looked like. Because the town I grew up in was not big, but it had a population of, I don't know, 25,000 people. My dad's town, he went to kindergarten through 12th grade in the same building
Wow.
with the same, I don't know, 20 kids or something. That was really tiny.
Judy says, Margaret was abandoned as a child. As a reader, I felt that she abandoned me. Why didn't we hear from her after she abandoned Tom?
Mhm.
That is such a fair question. And it's something I was very aware of because, in terms of, say, mic time, screen time,
Yeah.
when she leaves, like after that, yeah, she does not reappear. I had to I had to do it for the sake of the book, in that I didn't have anything else to write about with her in terms of this story. To continue writing about her past that point, it was either going to be writing about her mulling over it while she moved on with her life. And there's no arc in that in and of itself. That's not development. It would literally be kind of stagnant thinking as she went on with her life. I don't think she ever remarried, and she's still got major issues if she's not telling people that she was married and has a kid.
Hmm.
In those later years, she's gone on some dates, but she just doesn't include it, and that's messed up. That is really messed up. But I couldn't see what to do with her, and I thought this really is a case where she has left the story, and so Elvis has left the building, and Margaret has left the book, and I wasn't entirely comfortable with it because it goes against my sense of my want of balance, my appreciation of symmetry and kind of leveling things out. But I thought it was necessary for this story.
Hmm.
She removed herself from them, so at some point she was not going to get the same amount of screen time or mic time because she pulled herself out of the combined story of the rest of them.
Hmm.
I pulled her out, but she pulled herself out.
Or would you'd have to develop a whole other thing of where she lives, what she does. It's like too much. It's too much.
Yeah, and I wanted to really establish what her life was like post, uh, like in between that shoe store job and then showing up at Felix's
Hmm.
funeral. And yeah, there wasn't a big development that I mean, I could come up with one. I could probably write something more about her and her life, but it wouldn't have fit into this book.
It doesn't serve the story to do it. It doesn't serve the story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a different leg of her life.
Judy also asks, did you have any input into the cover art? It is just fantastic.
Mm.
And Carol has the cover the book right
There
there.
we go, right here. Well, let's see if I can do that. Oh, look, non-glare. Wow,
There
I
you
did better.
Yeah. Okay. So this is Anna Kochman. Anna Kochman is the person who's done the last 4 or 5 Elizabeth Strout covers. Um, they, in a nutshell here, I was lucky in that they asked me for input before they started. They said, "What things don't you want to see?" So I said, "Well, I don't want to see a Ferris wheel. I don't want there to be a Buckeye, a nut. And a few other things. I just didn't want it to go to these usual places. I didn't want planes in the background in the sky and someone looking off into those planes because we have a million of those covers lately. And but I wasn't really sure what else. So then they started coming up with things. The first thing they did was give me exactly what I asked for, which was like quiet landscape, lots of sky. Maybe it's a painting and there's a little house, and they did it and it was beautiful. And I looked at it and I said, thank you. And now I realize this is so dull. There's nothing makes you want to pick it up. So then we went through about, I don't know how many different cover artists, 4 or 5, did 2 or 3 each. And then Anna Kochman did 4 or 5 covers, and they were all different from this one, but there was this one.
Hmm.
And I loved it. I loved it. And so my input beyond that was the clouds. I said, could we just faintly, the different clouds in each panel? But mainly, and this I'm so happy about, but no one would really notice, is the windows.
Oh, Ah,
there were no windows lit up. And I said, well, what if it kind of suggests a narrative arc? Like everything's calm, no lights are on, something's going on in this house, there's a light on, and in the bottom panel, something's going on in two households. And I don't know if they just said, okay, that's fine, or if everybody there thought, oh yeah, that's brilliant. But they did it for me. And when they first gave it back to me, and it was kind of hard because it's Anna Kochman, and I thought I don't want to mess with what Anna Kochman did. But
yeah.
you asked, so I'll just suggest they had put like one light on here and then one light on here, and this one wasn't on. And this is when I think they really thought I was going cuckoo because I looked back and said, no, the whole point is that there's one light here and then there's both lights. Okay. I don't know if anybody's ever noticed,
And then
but
they go, Anna, we need another light.
can you imagine? I know. I mean, it must be
You
hard.
know, we want to do an evening one, or we want to do an event with cover designers, and we've got to figure out. I'm gonna put her on the list because it's those distinctive covers that you say that says something, and you're looking at this and you say, "God, I don't know what this book is about, but I'm getting something. I'm getting the trees. I'm getting the trees get bigger. I got the trees got bigger too. That says
Yeah, that was a
something.
nice, yeah, a really nice little thing. And I just like something that makes you want to pick it up.
Yeah,
And the first cover, the one they did that just was exactly what I asked for, I thought it's beautiful. And I would feel no need to pick that up if I were in a store. I would just think, well, that's a book I might get to one day.
yeah,
Whereas this one would just make me go, well, what is that? The colors are so beautiful. And if you look at it closely, you can see the pencil sketches around, like it's a watercolor filling in pencil sketches. You can see the pencil lines. It's just
wow.
beautiful.
We have a couple more questions. An anonymous attendee wants to know if you had any influence on selecting Michael Crouch as the narrator for the audio.
I did. That was an interesting thing. This is my sixth book, but it's the first book I've ever published that people actually read, first time I've ever had an audiobook, first time I've been in translation, all these things. This is
Wow.
a new deal for me. And their first thought was to go after a big name to see if they could get a big name. So the first person they went after was Tom Hanks because he had blurbed it and he
Hmm.
had done such a wonderful job with the Dutch House. And and as I learned, I learned a lot. The process starts fairly late, just like a few months before the book's coming out or
Hmm.
something, which seems to me crazy, but that's how they roll. When you ask a famous person or a big name, you have to wait for their answer before you can ask anybody else. So when we got the answer that he couldn't or didn't want to, or I don't know what the answer was, then they approached Meryl Streep and we had to then wait for Meryl Streep to say, can't do it. So then they said, well, do you have a dream celebrity person? And I said, well, those two would have been great, but Laura Linney, my gosh, Laura Linney,
Hmm.
that would be
Hmm.
beautiful. So they sent it to her, and apparently she read it, but or started to read it or something, and then it just wouldn't fit into her schedule, or maybe she didn't like it. I don't know. They don't tell you that stuff. So then I said to them, can we just drop this idea of going after a big name and let's look at the pros who make the books, who make
Hmm.
actors who do this. And I also said I have no leaning toward whether it's a male voice or a female voice. It seems to me it could be either. I wanted it to be just one voice and not multiple
Hmm.
voices. Um, the only note I said was if it's a male voice, I would like for it to be a male voice that is not at all invested in its masculinity.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, you know, take that for what you will. And so they sent me, I guess, 10 samples of 10 different people. And I was enthusiastic about two of them. I mean, they were all great. It
Yeah.
was really, I could really hear two of them. He was one. And so they said, well, what will be your first pick? And I obsessed over it. But then I thought, oh, he'd be my first pick. I could hear it. And he could do it. He was available. He could do it. He wanted to do it. So I I'm excited. I listened to the whole thing when I was on book tour, when I was on the planes, in segments. And the scene, there's a really, really emotional, challenging scene to write, to I would imagine maybe to read, I don't know, where Felix and Margaret have their big come to Jesus conversation. She doesn't fess up about everything, but she fesses up. They go to it, and it's right before she leaves. And I was really, really blown away by
Mhm.
how he handled that emotion. And he told me afterwards, I've not met him, but we've just emailed, but he told me afterwards that when he was reading Margaret's letter to Felix, that he had to stop a
Wow.
couple of times because he was tearing up because he was really, he said, I have to get really into it to do it. And I got so far into it that I couldn't do it without being upset.
Yeah, I'm a big worried
Wow,
about it
that's awesome. That's great.
feeling.
Susan asks, did you have a different ending in other drafts?
I had, I did, but the import of it was always the same. So, like I said, that I knew who was going to be alive, who was going to be dead. I knew that I wanted to step forward past Vietnam into the early 80s. I had this idea about that letter 60 years. So her 60th birthday, I like the idea of ending it on her 60th birthday. And then I wrote an ending that fit that about 8 different times. And in one of them, in a lot of them, it took place in the house. And I just thought, oh my God, I need a breath of fresh air at the end of this book. Can I get these people out of town? Would that kill me? And so I took him out. Before that, it was Tom's visit with Kathy happened right in the last scene. There was it ended with a conversation with Cal and Tom, um, while Becky was in the basement. Uh, I wrote it probably about 8 different ways. And at that point with my editor, we had narrowed it down to just the parts that still needed work. And it was a really fascinating way to to address those scenes because one of them was, say, the torpedoing scene. She There were about 5 scenes where she would come back and she would say, okay, so we're done bouncing the whole draft back and forth. We're really getting close to being done. But can you just send me a file of a new version of that scene and that scene? And we started doing that. These emails where it was just,
Ah,
here's a 4-page file. When I sent her the scene of the torpedoing scene, the way it's in the book, I just kept sort of fine tuning it and trying to make it better and better and better. And she received it on her phone and she read it on the subway platform on her phone and then called me coming up the stairs. And she was kind of emotional too. She said, "You did it. You did it. Oh my gosh." And it was so fun at that point to just really start to feel like you're polishing these little spots here and there. And the ending was one of those. I just kept sending her the ending. And
wow.
when I sent her this one, I said, spoiler alert and my apologies, it ends on a Ferris wheel. And I know that you're going to tell me not to do that, but there it is. And she called me and she said, "What the hell are you talking about? What's wrong with a Ferris wheel?" I said, "Isn't it corny? Isn't it dumb?" And she said, "I don't think so." And I said, "Okay, then I don't think so."
No, then it's good.
And insecurity.
I was just joking around with you. I'm sure it's fine.
And then that last, like the very last paragraph, there was just this moment where I wrote that paragraph and I thought, maybe I got it. I don't know. Maybe that's it. I really like that last sentence a lot. So I'll send it to Robin. Send it to Robin. And again, this is the end of 2 years of our working on this book. And she called me and she said, "You did it.
I love that.
I'm trusting you. I'm totally trusting you at this point." So that was the various versions of the ending.
And people say, what does an editor do all day? Well, there's this last paragraph that came in and it finally works, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, and and that followed, all these drafts. She would send me back 11-page editorial letters with each draft.
Wow.
Some of them
Wow.
single spaced. I would print the letter out and put it in a folder and have it all multicolored with highlighters and tabs by the end of it, because I just kept going back to it and back to it. And she worked by hand and pencil on the manuscript, which is great. And so you would see comments like, I'm starting to worry about what the reader is reading toward at this point.
Hmm.
Read something like that, and you go, oh, yeah, me too.
No. How
Me
many
too.
years did you edit? How many years did you work on the editing process? It was 6 to write?
And
6 months?
two full
Years.
years.
2 full years.
And and it was very educational for me because we kept not having a publication date.
Hmm.
So, I have lots of friends who are writers. Whatever field you're in, you know a lot of people in that field. So I have lots of friends who are writers, friends with books out. I had people with books that got accepted right around the time that my book got accepted. And then their book came out, and I still didn't have a publication date. And a year later, the paperback of their book came out, and I still didn't have a publication date. I had an assistant at my job. He sold his first book right at the same time that I sold Buckeye. So we were like, yay, look at us, yay. His second book came out before this book came out. Talk about humbling. But it was a good thing that I didn't have a pub date because it never had to be moved. The publication date never had to be moved after it was assigned.
But this also says something to me is, and it says something to the readers. Readers think, oh, I can get this book for free, or I can get this book, blah, blah, blah. And when you realize how many years somebody went into writing something, and I gave a talk last week and I said, a lot of people say they buy books, they get books from the library. I said, great. I said, then here's what I want you to do. When you give a gift, buy a book. Buy a book and give it somebody as a gift. Instead of buying them a sweater, buy the book. Do something like that along the way that it's sort of, I'm not going to say makes up for the time of you going to the library. And there's nothing wrong with going to the library. I don't want to get the notes tomorrow morning. But what I'm saying is their authors need to be supported because writing takes so long and writing and editing. And you're thinking about how many years you were working on this book. It's not a 20-minute thing. And I think the more that we hear about that, the more important it is for people to understand it's a long time. It's not a short haul.
Yeah, I've got to confess that when I have those thoughts are when I was reading, say, some of the Goodreads reviews. Like that dude who said, this is what happens when somebody from New York tries to write about Ohio. And I just want to say, can we sit down for 5 minutes? Just so I can just tell you, and I'm not trying to convince you of anything, but just so that I can say, I didn't just toss it off.
Yeah.
It wasn't, um, but I do also believe that there's no obligation on anybody's part.
Mm-mm.
And we do these things. I firmly believe that you do it for the love of doing it. And then if anything happens with it, that is gravy. And this has been the most gravy I could ever imagine with this book. But it's it is it, I love that advice about if you read a book in the library
Mhm.
and you loved it, then buy it. Likewise, I try to be a good literary citizen. A lot of books come to me for free,
Mhm.
um, because friends will say, here's your
Mhm.
book. An editor will say, I think you'll like this. And if I read something and I like it and I got that book for free, then I buy it
Mhm.
for somebody right then. I
Mhm.
just think, not put it on my to buy later list or, down the holiday gift giving time, but I just try right then to roll it right through and say, all right, you gave this to me, so I'm going to buy it for somebody. So
Somebody
there's,
else, pay it forward. Buy it forward.
yeah. And I know books are expensive, but if you read slowly like I do, it takes me, if I'm really reading a book, it can take me a couple weeks to read a book.
Mhm.
And that's not bad for the money.
No, 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 no.
Just wanted to read this question from Linda. She says, it seems like you have distinct relationships with your characters. When you finish writing and the book goes to print, do you miss your characters or experience their absence the way we feel the empty space left by a loved one or a close friend who no longer is part of our daily life? You express so much passion and tenderness about your characters and the experience of engaging with their lives.
Oh, thank you for that. It's the first time it's ever happened to me. I I felt really, really strange after so many years. I also didn't work on anything else, writing wise. I've never been able to work on two things at once. So even when I was writing short stories, I never wrote two stories at once.
Mm.
And so I had only been writing about these characters and this town, this setting. And I was really surprised that it still is uncomfortable to not be there. Um, and it sounds so silly, but I've never had this reaction before to something that I've written. But I have some of the emotional reaction that I was going for.
Mm.
It's kind of goofy to say because it's mine and I created it and everything, but there are parts of this that not only can I not, that I would never read at a reading just because I just choke.
Mhm.
There are parts of it I can't talk about because I'll choke.
Mm.
And I don't know what that is. And I'm not saying, didn't I do a great job? How about that for emotional import? I'm not saying that at all. It's kind of embarrassing, but it is this reality I've had to accept. And I found out the hard way. I mean, early on in doing something like this, um, we were talking about Felix and Felix's demise, his physical demise. And I noticeably got choked up by my own stuff. And I was like, so when I wrote that,
Yeah, when I wrote that, it really meant something to me.
corners of my eyes, and so I just don't go to certain places. But I can live with that. That's kind of a confession. It's not something I walk around saying to a lot of people. I know here I am saying it to a whole lot of people, but th- it is something I experienced this time, and I don't know if I'll ever write about any of them again, but I could see that I might one day.
Might do that again.
I might just revisit, like, I might write an Everett story. I might write a Tom story. I don't know. Um, but yeah, it became incredibly real for me. Just
Be an audio original. Could be an audio original.
yeah.
There
Oh
you
yeah,
go.
that would be.
An
I'll,
audio original. We could go from there.
I'll contact Michael Crouch and say, what
Yeah, Michael, can we just do this again together?
let's do it one more time.
I just wanted to wrap up the Q&A with this comment from Andrea. She says, I just want to say how much I appreciated the scene where Ida talks about Roman's affair. It gave me the language I've been searching for 20 years to describe my feelings about my husband's affair. Thanks for giving me those words.
Oh,
Mhm. Wow.
wow.
A very powerful comment.
That is extremely powerful. You're welcome sounds like a really strange thing to say in response to that. I would say thank you, and that is astounding to me. That I'll remember that for the rest of my life. That comment.
I tell you, we are so lucky to have the readers that we have on our site and joining us this evening. I have to say, one question was better than the next about being able to have comments. This is just not, you're like, where do you get your ideas from? We really enjoy doing this with these people who come on from across the country that come on with their ideas about your book and share. And I have to say that we at the Book Report feel very, very lucky about the readers that we have that come and want to join an evening like this. We're almost into talking for 2 hours and nobody seems to feel that way.
Uh,
And I absolutely love that. And I appreciate it so much. I appreciate your time tonight. And I guess my last question for you is, you're working on something now?
well, first, I just want to say, yeah, I never in my life thought that this many people would want to hear anything I had to say. And these questions have been fantastic. It's been it is not the run-of-the-mill walking through how did the book come about? It's
No, no, it
really,
never is. The questions, we get questions in advance. The questions that people come on with during the evening it's really deep reading, and we love that. Absolutely love that because you feel like you've been with a group of friends around the room, and I've just been looking at the chat during the night, but just to see what people have been talking about, what they've been saying, the
ah,
connection thing, even though everybody's in their own homes, it's really incredible.
yeah, it's just astounding, and I'm so grateful to everybody for wanting to spend your evening like this. The answer to the question is yes, I am. I mentioned having noted a few ideas to death over the past 9 months or so.
Right.
And I have an idea right now that I'm noodling around with, and I'm very much hoping and trying not to note to death. And
Fabulous.
my fingers are crossed, but we'll see.
When it's finished, will you come back again?
I will absolutely come back again. And I hope it's not 8 years from now.
We hope so too. We hope so too. But I tell you, I really, really, really appreciate your time. Your very, very thoughtful answers, and for bringing us into the story, and your whole how it happened along the way. The little communications you had with your editor, not little communications, all the communications you had with your editor, the picking of the audiobook. These are all the things that I think people love to hear about, the story that's behind. And what's really nice is that we used to just get 3 minutes on Jenna talking about the book, or we'd get 5 minutes of talking about the book. And this gives us an opportunity to have people really hear you talk about the book and walk away understanding why you made Margaret the way you did and why you had Becky be who she was. And it wasn't just there was a real thing that happened behind the scenes on that. And I think that's really interesting for readers to hear.
Thank you. And I'll just say if anybody has something they really want to ask, um, go onto my website, which is patrickryanbooks.com. I think it's on the bio or about page. And down there it's got the email it doesn't have my email, but it's got the email from my publicist and my agent. Do not hesitate to write to either one of those and just say, hey, this is a question, and I'll answer for sure if you want to
Mhm.
ask some questions.
And if
I
and if anybody gets them towards me as well, I'll do the same thing about directing them on because we really love that connection of being able to bring the author into your home. But also, if you have a question that comes up in your book club, if a question comes up in your book club, make sure we hear it because then we might be able to figure out some other way. I mean, we've got book club discussion questions on our reading group guide site. We've got that. But if there's something special that you're bringing up, it's something that we might be able to talk about more about for the paperback. There might be another angle to be talking about with something. So the
Yeah.
comments, I'm going to send you the chat because I will send it to you because people are just loving this story's close to my heart. It's just been one comment like that throughout the whole evening.
Oh, I'm so honored. Thank you.
Thank you. And we hope to see you next time. Promise you'll
Yeah.
come back. Promise you'll come back. We'll have 2 more hours of your life to come back. So thank you for joining us. And to everybody else, we've got a couple of new upcoming events to tell you about. Da-da-da. Tonight's event will be available on YouTube or podcast later this week, and we'll all alert you when that's live. And sometimes authors put them actually up on their websites in case they can't be there for a book group or something. Here's a big conversation. We have this events page on TBR Network where you can sign up for all of our programs, hear everything that we're doing. We've got Lisa Risden is joining us on Thursday, April 23rd at 1 o'clock in the afternoon because she lives in Sweden to talk about her book, When the Cranes Fly South, which is one of my book reporter bets on selections. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, to me, this is the third book that holds up next to The Correspondent and Theo of Golden. So we have some readers are doing some advanced reading on this to give us some questions. Every people read this. Sign up's available right now. Laura Dave is going to join us on Wednesday, April 29th at 8 o'clock to talk about The First Time I Saw Him, which is a Book Reporter Bets On selection as well. And yes, we are going to be talking about the second season of her Apple television show, The Last Thing He Told Me. I did tell her that I think she could have easier words for me to be able to say the first time I saw him, the last time I saw it. Like, okay, yeah, I'm doing well. And sign up for that is on the site as well. And then we do our monthly Bookaccino Live preview events where we talk about books coming out in the next 4 weeks and 2 months after that. And that is going to be on Wednesday, April 8th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And we have hundreds of people, usually at least 300 people show up for that. And that was an idea we dreamed up the summer of 2020 when we realized that no one could go to the library or the bookstore because everyone was quarantined at home. So we said, what can we do? And we said, literally had a 15-minute meeting. We do things quickly around here. And we said, we'll present books coming in the next 4 weeks and then 2 months later. And we did that. And it was such a huge success that we're still doing it now 6 years later. And we've had so much fun. And we have usually at least 300 people still showing up, and people watch this thing afterwards as well. So it's really because the readers are showing up is the reason we can do these things. So sign up for events at the Book Report Network newsletter to never miss an event. And we've got 240 author interviews out there also, in case you don't have anything else that you want to be able to listen to or watch. So thank you everybody else for joining us tonight. Patrick, thank you for taking so much time to be with us.
Yes,
Really
Patrick,
appreciate
thank
it.
you so much for your time and your very thoughtful answers. It was such a fun evening.
Thank
So
you all.
very special.
Thank you very much.
Great. And to next time, everybody, to next time. We look forward to it. So it's 10 o'clock here in the East. We're going to sign off and talk to you more. Thank you so much now.